my work has been with early childhood, and I think that our propensity to listen to young kids is very low. Part of it is because we often dismiss whatever they say as cute or temporary or not fully formed. But I feel like there are actually lots of ways that children are very thoughtful, fully informed, and can be very engaged and give us ideas of how to navigate the world. And so I think at the end of the day, I'm really trying to do this work for children, especially in school institutions. And I think at the same time, I think that's why my work also focuses on teachers, because I see teachers as really integral to that work. I think a lot of times we don't see them as public intellectuals. We see them, especially early childhood teachers, I think we see them as caregivers, as babysitters, as daycare workers, and they're certainly not. They are doing really intellectual work, and I think caregiving and love is also intellectual work. And so it's trying to put teachers in conversation with children and how they both parties sort of get dismissed sometimes when we're talking about the intellectual landscape, and I'd like to put them both back in there. I really started with focusing on young children, just because when we think of play, we always think of little kids. But then to reimagine play as a creative intellectual activity that kind of spans through the lifespan. So I've been thinking a lot about what play does for the literacy and work of young children as they enter into school-based activities. But then I've also been thinking about what play means to foster creativity and innovative work as we move into adulthood, whether it's being teachers, which most of my work has been in, or in the workplace, or in just different facets of our lives when we move out of what we think of as childhood. And I think when we think of professional development, we're always thinking about how we can make curriculum better or teaching better, or here are like 10 pedagogical strategies to be a better math teacher or whatever, and I was definitely involved in that, where it was basically the idea of giving teachers more ideas so they could have something to do on Monday. And I think the pivot for me has been maybe one of the ways that we actually sustain teachers is to also engage them in creative, playful activity, so that you can come to this professional development and it's not going to be about making lesson plans for 8 hours. It's going to be about cultivating some kind of creative practice that I think sometimes teachers don't get a lot of chance to do, right? I was a teacher for 7 years, and I think that when I actually grew in my practice was when I became more confident in my own abilities, not just in teaching, but as a writer, as someone who enjoys literature, as someone who likes to make things or create things in classrooms. And I think I got better at that aspect of it. And I really found that actually made me into a better teacher for the students that I had. And I think the same with kids too. Like, I've watched so many children struggle sometimes with school subjects in a traditional sense, and then really mobilize those same skills when they're in play, or when they're developing peer relationships, or when they're trying to contribute and participate in classrooms. And I think a lot of times we say to children especially, and to teachers, like, this is a time that you're going to get evaluated on this particular skill, and if you can't do it at this particular time, then we're going to assume that you don't know how to do it. When I think there's so many other facets or times of the day when you give them the space and the time and the conditions that they're able to accomplish some of those same tasks. So I think the larger question for me is, what are those conditions? When can those things happen? And is there a space in the school day where play and creative activity can be thoughtfully curated so that children and teachers kind of have a chance at space to show some of those relevant ideas? I think the future of my research is kind of to bring generations together. And so one of the things that I would like to do is to think about play also as intergenerational and not as divided by age groups. I think that seems like a natural thing that we just do. It's like, you're 5, you're in kindergarten, we have grade levels, we have boxes, we have categories for everything. And I think that there is a really interesting intersection of adults and children playing together, or children playing across the age groups, and I just wonder what the conditions of that might actually look like. I think a lot of times we see in schools children and adults separated. We see teachers kind of sacrificing themselves so they could create classrooms for children. I think that doesn't always have to be the case, right? Like, I think that both parties can really benefit from getting to know each other, building relationships, trying to see how they can create activities and conditions for play that can energize both of them, right? And so I think the intergenerational intersections for me, I think, is a really productive space that I'd like to explore more.